The United States Air Force came up with the term UFO, unidentified flying object, back in 1953, and over time, it's come to mean anything that might hint at aliens trying to contact us. There's an actual field called ufology, dedicated to studying these kinds of things. But there's an unexpected twist. The authorities don't really like the term UFO anymore. Instead, they've switched to calling them UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. It sure sounds more professional, doesn't it? It also kind of distances the term from decades of wild alien theories tied to UFOs. Now, if you're into UFOs or UAPs, this is actually a pretty exciting time. Back in December 2020, when the government passed a huge spending bill, there was a little clause tucked in there about UFOs. Basically, it called for more transparency and pushed agencies to share what they know. And shockingly, the CIA has recently dumped all of its declassified UFO documents online. That's 2,780 pages of material now available to the public, and you can find it all on a site called the Black Vault. It's run by John Greenewald Jr., a guy who's basically dedicated his life to collecting and sharing UFO-related info. But of course, getting those documents wasn't easy. Greenewald had to file over 10,000 Freedom of Information Act requests to pry them out of the government's hands. He says the whole process was like pulling teeth, and even now, the files aren't exactly user-friendly. They're in an outdated format, multi-page TIFF files, and the text scans are messy, making it hard to search through them. To help, Greenewald converted the whole collection into 713 PDFs. But even then, some of the documents were poorly photocopied, which made it tricky to dig into the details. Still, UFO fans have already uncovered some wild stuff. One document mentions a Bosnian fugitive claiming to have had contact with aliens. According to the document, at the time it was written, Radovan Karadzic remained alive, but the authorities didn't know where he was. The rumors of his near capture lacked evidence, and NATO countries blamed each other for failing to act. Critics saw the hunt for Karadzic as part of a political circus, with no real effort to bring him to justice. But the real question is whether they didn't want to, or just couldn't, because he wasn't on Earth anymore. Another document talks about mysterious explosions at midnight in a small Russian town. On the 12th of April, a powerful midnight explosion shook Sassovo, a small city in Russia's Ryazan region. The blast caused a lot of damage. It ripped off roofs, shattered windows, and rocked buildings like an earthquake. No one was seriously injured, but many people were shocked. Schools and kindergartens were closed, and buildings were temporarily patched with plastic sheeting. At the time when the document was written, the cause of the explosion was still a mystery. Theories ranged from buried World War II munitions, a falling air bomb, a meteorite, or a fiery UFO sighting reported by locals. Military experts suspected ammonium nitrate stored nearby, though this fertilizer had been safely used for years. A massive crater, 92 feet wide and 13 feet deep, was the only evidence of the disaster. One of the most intriguing finds is a 1970s document showing the Assistant Deputy Director for Science and Technology personally receiving some mysterious UFO-related info. But of course, like most government releases, a lot of the good stuff is blacked out. Greenewald still hopes and fights to get those redacted sections declassified. There must be something special about that information. As you see, digging into this data takes a lot of patience. You're basically wasting hours and hours of your life hoping to find something that stands out. But if you're still curious, check out the Black Vault. You might discover something mysterious and creepy in those thousands of pages. Did you know that reports of strange object sightings are quite common? The British Ministry of Defense reports at least 100 UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, sightings every year. That means there have been at least 2,400 reports in that country alone since the year 2000. A UAP is considered to be anything that cannot be immediately explained or identified. Usually, most reports find an explanation, such as atmospheric phenomena or known objects. However, the portion that remains unexplained is undoubtedly the most intriguing. Throughout history, there have been waves of sightings. One of the most well-known occurred in 1947, famously referred to as the flying saucer madness. That summer saw a flood of reports across the United States, with approximately 800 sightings that year alone. On that occasion, a local news story reported by a civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold claimed to have seen disc-shaped objects traveling at speeds of around 1,200 miles per hour in a line of 9, passing over Mount Rainier. This was the first post-World War II sighting and is considered the report that marks the beginning of the modern UFO era. Returning to this century, there are at least 15 well-known cases. Let's examine some of the most striking examples. Number 1. The first case we'll look at has even sparked NASA's interest. It concerns the unexplained activity in a small town in the United Kingdom called Bonsall. Residents have reported and documented numerous cases of unexplained activity, earning it the nickname UFO hotspot. Reports range from silver shapes to strange lights in the sky. In 2001, Sharon Rowlands accidentally filmed a house-sized disc with colored lights around it. The video caught NASA's attention because it resembled an object spotted during a 1996 space mission. However, the only conclusion NASA reached was that the object was metallic and didn't match any known commercial or military aircraft. Number 2, this case is from 2004 and concerns the Tinley Park lights in Illinois, United States. Residents reported inexplicable lights in the sky, which were also seen in neighboring cities like Chicago. Witnesses claimed to have seen a triangular pattern of red orbs hovering over the town. Other witnesses stated that the lights displayed a range of colors, from amber to greenish yellow. Skeptics who saw the lights firsthand dismissed them as an elaborate prank, but no definitive explanation was found. The lights were seen twice that year and remain a mystery to this day. Number 3. The next case involves some of the most viewed footage of sightings. The unexplained videos from 2004, 2014, and 2015 recorded by pilots of the USS Nimitz and USS Theodore Roosevelt. The fighter jets managed to capture these strange flying objects using their infrared tracking cameras. In 2021, the Pentagon officially confirmed the authenticity of these recordings. Fighter pilot Commander David Fravor of the Nimitz stated that the object had been appearing for 2 weeks when he was called to investigate the case. The object appeared at an altitude of 80,000 feet, descended rapidly to 20,000 feet, and then hovered. Fravor reported seeing an oval-shaped object approximately 10 feet, 3 meters long flying over the ocean. He and other pilots accompanying him stated that they were able to observe the object for about 5 minutes before it disappeared. It was Commander Chad Underwood, in a second wave of investigation and equipped with an infrared camera, who managed to capture the first video, showing the object's erratic movements. Number 4. This case occurred in 2006 and is known as the O'Hare International Airport sighting in Chicago. Around 4:15 p.m., 12 United Airlines employees and several witnesses outside the airport saw an unidentified flying object resembling a flying saucer. The object was hovering over gate C-17. It was also seen by pilots, airline staff, and mechanics. Witnesses described it as completely silent and dark gray in color, adding that it clearly wasn't a cloud. A witness claimed that the object shot upwards at incredible speed, leaving a hole in the clouds that quickly closed. Despite numerous testimonies from people shocked by what they saw with their own eyes, authorities refused to pursue an investigation, as the alleged craft did not appear on any radar. Number 5. This case was cataloged as the 2024 New Jersey drone sightings. Interestingly, the appearances occurred on both the east and west coasts of the United States multiple times. These large, unidentified drones were seen near residential areas, power plants, railways, highways, and critical infrastructure, such as ports, bridges, and police stations. Over 3,000 reports were collected, but investigators couldn't determine an explanation. The Department of Homeland Security stated that the drones were manned aircraft operating lawfully. At the same time, the federal government called for legislation and additional resources to address the drone activity. According to a legislative briefing, the drones were up to 6 feet, 1.8 meters in diameter, operated for 6 or 7 hours, often turned off their lights, acted in a coordinated manner, and evaded detection. They most certainly did not seem to be flown by hobbyists. To this day, the operators or points of origin remain unidentified, but official investigations attributed most of the drone sightings to manned aircraft or misidentifications caused by nighttime illusions. Some even suggested mass hysteria, recalling the notorious 1947 flying saucer madness. Which of these cases sent chills down your spine? Let us know in the comments. And if you're curious about the latest unidentified phenomena, don't miss our video on the FBI's recently published UFO documents. In the middle of the previous century, flying saucers were constantly making headlines. America was going through a surge of reported UFO sightings. So it shouldn't probably come as a surprise that the American authorities, namely the US Air Force, created a couple of short-lived programs. Those were Project Sign and Project Grudge, and their main goal was to look into that phenomenon. These programs were followed by likely the most famous of them all, Project Blue Book. It was a large-scale government study that lasted from 1951 to 1969. The initiator of this program was Major General Charles P. Cabell. He was a former intelligence director of the Air Force. Project Blue Book scrupulously gathered over 12,600 reports about people seeing bizarre unidentified objects in the sky. After thorough research, it was determined that most of those had natural, quite mundane explanations. As for the rest of the reports, the members of Project Blue Book simply didn't have enough data to evaluate them. That's why support for their efforts dwindled. Officially, Project Blue Book was closed in December 1969. But apparently, it didn't make American authorities lose interest in UFO sightings. Because in mid-December 2017, the world found out that they had secretly launched one more UFO research program in the late 2000s. Accordingly to certain documents, American authorities spent around $22 million over a 4-year span on a project called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, aka AATIP. This project was started in 2007, and its main goal was to study UFO phenomena. Most likely, all this activity was triggered by the 2004 Tic Tac incident. That's when a few US Air Force pilots spotted unidentified flying objects off the coast of California. They captured them on video. None of the pilots could figure out what these objects were. They behaved in a weird way, as if our laws of physics didn't apply to them. They were reportedly flying extremely fast and rotating in unpredictable movements. It looks as if after that incident, American authorities decided to investigate whether those objects could be identified or not. And if not, they were eager to know where they had come from and if they had been a threat. When the New York Times story about the new project broke, officials announced that the study had been terminated in 2012. However, there were people who claimed that the program was still ongoing. One of those was a military intelligence official running the program until they quit in October 2016. In any case, let's have a closer look at this mysterious program. Indeed, the areas of research funded by the project resembled things you could find in Star Trek. For example, one grant was for the study of traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy. This study was conducted by Eric W. Davis of EarthTech International, Inc. Another grant sponsored the research of invisibility cloaking. One more area of study included warp drive, dark energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions. This research was conducted by a theoretical physicist and director of the nonprofit Icarus Interstellar. As we've already mentioned, all these studies received at least $22 million of funding, but this sum could have been much bigger. No one has revealed why or how these studies were given such huge grants under the AATI program. The results of the study aren't known publicly either. The criteria for choosing these fields of research could be that warp drives and stargates might be useful for extraterrestrial civilizations traveling interstellar distances to visit our planet. Still, some people are not amused that such questionable fields of study were receiving substantial government funding.
It was the year 2015 when U.S. Navy pilots flying training missions off the East Coast saw something truly eerie. They spotted oval-shaped objects moving quickly over the water. They seemed to rotate as they flew. At first, the pilots thought it was just one object, but soon they realized there were many of them, moving in unusual ways. These objects didn't look like normal aircraft. They didn't have visible engines, didn't produce exhaust, and didn't just hover near the sea like helicopters would. Some of them appeared at altitudes of 30,000 feet and were moving faster than the speed of sound. The strangest and scariest thing? The pilots had been observing similar objects almost every day for months. Mind you, those weren't rookie pilots. One of them was an experienced pilot with 10 years in the Navy. He, along with his fellow pilots, knew what typical aircraft looked like and how to stay calm under pressure. It wasn't until 2019 that the public heard about those sightings. That's when the New York Times published an article revealing them. The article included video footage taken by the pilots' plane cameras, which was later confirmed by the U.S. Navy in April 2020. The Navy officially released the videos soon after. In recent years, sightings of UFOs, now called unexplained aerial phenomena, have been reported by other reliable sources as well. The U.S. government has started to take these sightings seriously and has even brought in scientists to quietly investigate what might be behind them. So far, we still don't know exactly what the pilots and others have seen. But this growing scientific interest is pushing us closer to finding out more. While military pilots reporting UFOs might be a recent development, the public has been observing and reporting them for decades. In fact, the UFO craze in the US can be traced back to the summer of 1947. On June 14th of that year, a rancher discovered strange debris on his land near Roswell, New Mexico. At first, he thought it was from a kite. But even after looking through the bits of rubber, tinfoil, paper, and wood, he still couldn't make sense of it. The rancher then told the local sheriff about his find. And since his ranch was close to the Roswell Army airfield, the sheriff reported it to the military. Officers came to check it out, and couldn't identify the wreckage either. The next day, the Army issued a press release saying that they had recovered the remains of a flying saucer. The local newspaper even ran a headline, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell." But just a few days later, the Army changed its story, claiming the debris was from a weather balloon. By then, though, the excitement over UFOs had already sparked, and UFO fever spread across the nation. Now, UFOs are real, in the sense that people have indeed seen objects they can't identify in the sky. But when people ask, are UFOs real? They usually mean, are we being visited by aliens? And science doesn't have an answer to that yet. After the Roswell incident, UFO sightings became more frequent. People made wild claims, saying they'd met aliens or even been abducted. These stories were mysterious and captivating. No wonder they gained traction. The government didn't help much since it was keeping its own secrets. Eventually, they admitted to hiding something, but it wasn't little green men from other planets. In 1995, the Air Force released a report explaining that the debris found on Brazel's ranch wasn't from a weather balloon, but from Project Mogul, a secret Cold War program that used balloons to detect missile launches of certain countries. As for the alien bodies people claim to have seen, they were crash test dummies used in experiments with ejection seats. In 2021, the US government released a brief report on UAPs, aka unexplained aerial phenomena, stating that they have found no evidence of aliens. At the same time, they acknowledged that many UAP sightings had been recorded since 2004, and those remained unexplained. According to the report, those sightings did not necessarily point to alien spacecraft. Some could be birds, debris like party balloons, secret military projects, or even new technology from other countries. In May 2022, Congress held a public hearing on UFOs, and high-ranking military officials testified there. They revealed that since 2021, 400 unexplained sightings had been documented, but none suggested extraterrestrial life. At the same time, there's more and more evidence hinting that Earth may not be the only place with life in the universe. Earth itself is 4.5 billion years old, and life emerged here around 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. Life on Earth began fairly quickly, which means that the process of life forming wasn't overly difficult. And if life could begin easily on Earth, it's likely that it could also start on many other planets in the universe. The Milky Way galaxy alone contains 1 trillion planets, and there may be trillions more in the universe. Given these numbers, there is a lot of potential for life elsewhere. However, just because there's a possibility of life elsewhere doesn't necessarily mean that aliens have visited Earth. That's why SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence researchers, are focused on detecting signs of life elsewhere in the universe, not on studying UFOs. For a long time, most scientists dismissed the study of UFOs as pseudoscience. That's why many researchers interested in UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, stayed silent to avoid being seen as eccentric. But this has started to change. In June 2022, NASA created a team of scientific experts to search for the unknown in air and space. The researchers suggested using NASA's huge amount of space data to assist in the study of UAPs. The team also made it clear that studies of UAPs should focus on evidence and data, not speculation. Instead of simply collecting stories or relying on accidental sightings, the researchers used telescopes to capture footage of the sky. They gather this data and then analyze it with the help of artificial intelligence. They plan to add more observatories, and over 100 scientists are already involved. Astrobiologist Julia DeMarines suggests that some UAP sightings could be caused by unusual weather conditions. For instance, spacecraft launched near sunset can create strange effects. The gases expelled by spacecraft reflect only the light reaching the upper atmosphere at that time. And since the sunlight remains reflective for a long period, such sightings can seem unexplainable. UAPs might also be caused by light reflecting off communication satellites. But could UAPs really be alien spaceships? People often expect first contact with alien life to be dramatic, but the reality might be more subtle. Our first encounter with alien life may actually be discovering their technology. For example, we might find a piece of space debris that didn't originate on Earth, like spotting an empty plastic bag blowing through space. We'd know it didn't come from Earth, but we wouldn't know where it came from. Another possibility is that the aliens we might encounter may no longer exist. In 1961, astronomer Frank Drake developed the Drake equation, which estimates how many alien civilizations might be capable of sending signals. The equation considers factors like the rate at which stars form and the number of planets capable of supporting life in a Goldilocks zone, a habitable zone located at the right distance from a star for water to remain a liquid. However, one key factor in the equation is represented by L, which stands for the length of time technological civilizations produce detectable signs of their existence. Humanity has only been technologically advanced for a little over 100 years, in a universe that is nearly 14 billion years old. It means that the timing for civilizations to overlap might be rare. Many civilizations might have existed before us, and many may come after us, but the chance that we overlap with theirs is slim. Despite this, some scientists believe that it won't be long before we find definitive evidence of alien life.
70 years ago, physicist Enrico Fermi asked a question that has puzzled scientists ever since. If life is common in the universe, why haven't we seen any evidence of it? This question is often referred to as the Fermi paradox, and it has sparked tons of theories about why extraterrestrial intelligence might exist, yet remains undetected. From the idea that humanity might be alone in the universe, to the possibility that we're simply too early or too late to find any signs of alien life. A recent study gives us a new perspective on this mystery. It's led by Robin Hanson, the creator of the Great Filter Theory, and proposes a new model to predict when we might finally encounter alien civilizations. This model suggests that we may not meet other advanced civilizations for another 200 million to 2 billion years. Let's first define the models of alien civilizations proposed by the authors. Generally speaking, we can consider two types of civilizations: quiet and loud. Loud aliens quickly expand their sphere of influence and thus are very easy to detect. Quiet aliens are difficult to detect as they do not expand or change much before going extinct. We have little data on them. So let's take a closer look at the loud aliens. Since they should be easy to detect, we can fit theories about them into our data and say a lot about them. The authors presented a particularly simple model of loud aliens, the so-called grabby aliens. It is a model with only 3 free parameters. Let's discuss them. Once a civilization reaches a certain level of technological development, it begins to expand rapidly, altering the space it occupies and potentially preventing other civilizations from developing in that area. This expansion could take the form of large-scale colonization, the construction of massive structures, or the production of techno-signatures, signals or artifacts that would be detectable from Earth. But such rapid growth requires an incredibly high level of technology. A complex history must be between the very origin of life and such a level of development. During this period of development, fatal events may occur, which a civilization either overcomes or not. For example, it's believed that life on Earth overcame a difficult step when it learned to consume oxygen. This idea is very similar to the idea of the Great Filter, according to which there is a barrier to development that makes detectable extraterrestrial life exceedingly rare. Such fatal events are called hard steps. And a number of these steps, Antichrist, is the first parameter of the model. The second parameter is based on the timeline of significant events in the evolution of life on Earth. This is the probability of the origin of life. The universe is about 13.8 billion years old, and Earth formed around 4.5 billion years ago. The earliest forms of life appeared between 4.2 and 3.8 billion years ago, but humanity has only existed for the last 200,000 years, and we've only had the technology to search for extraterrestrial life for about 70 years. So it's possible that advanced civilizations could take much longer to evolve, particularly on planets orbiting stars with much longer lifespans than our sun. When a civilization becomes loud, it begins to rapidly expand its domain. To do this, it uses interstellar flights. Such flights are carried out at some average speed, which limits the speed of expansion of such civilizations. So this expansion speed is the last free parameter. By studying the world around us, the history of our civilization, and the fact that we have not yet discovered any other civilization around us, scientists can obtain approximate values of the model parameters. This means they can predict the evolution of civilizations, as well as conduct stochastic simulations. And here are the amazing results they've obtained. Grabby civilizations might appear once per million galaxies before they start expanding, which means they're incredibly rare. Their rarity also means that they could be very difficult to detect. If a civilization is expanding rapidly, the light or signals they produce might not reach us until long after they've already begun their expansion. This could explain why we haven't detected any signs of advanced alien life so far. The study's most intriguing prediction is that humanity is likely to encounter the nearest loud civilization, one that is actively expanding and altering its environment within the next 200 million to 2 billion years. Until then, the chances of detecting alien techno-signatures are slim. The researchers also suggest that there may be many quiet civilizations out there, those that haven't yet reached the level of technological development needed to expand and make themselves known. These quiet civilizations could be much closer than we think, possibly even within our own galaxy. But because they haven't yet begun their expansion, they're much harder to detect. The model implies that if we want to find evidence of extraterrestrial life, we may need to look for quieter, more subtle signs rather than expecting to see grand displays of alien technology. An air traffic controller registers a distress call from a commercial pilot. Another call and one more. All of the calls report the same, an unidentified flying object. These alleged sightings happened between Saturday, December the 7th, and Sunday. Pilots were claiming they had seen numerous mysterious flying objects and lights over Eugene, Oregon. after live8c.net, which broadcasts air traffic control transmissions, published the audio recordings of the pilot's reports. This news went viral on social media platforms. The Federal Aviation Administration confirmed the sightings a few days later. They said that a pilot had reported observing unidentified lights while flying in Seattle Air Route Traffic Control Center airspace. But at the same time, the FAA didn't confirm the authenticity of the audio, making the rounds on social media. Now, if you listen to the audio attentively, you'll find out that some object was registered by Air Traffic Control Collision Avoidance Systems. You can also hear air traffic control informing the pilot that no military activity had been happening in the area. At 8:39 p.m. on Saturday, a United Airlines pilot said on the transmission that the lights appeared just straight west of Eugene. They saw 3 or 4 of them. What shocked the United Flight 1596 pilot the most was that the lights were all altitudes up and down, which was pretty crazy. The National UFO Reporting Center also got a report, this time from a different pilot. He overheard the chatter over air traffic control channels while landing the plane. That pilot confirmed the sightings reported over Eugene around 8:40 p.m. Soon after that, the pilot of a medical evacuation aircraft under tail number N661LF joined the conversation, announcing they had just seen another light. It zipped toward the plane and then dashed back out toward the ocean. According to the pilot's statement, the light was red and moving at an extreme speed. After receiving all these reports, air traffic control realized they needed to act fast, so they started instructing the pilots to do everything they could to avoid a collision. They cleared the planes to maneuver as necessary, left or right, to steer clear of the UFO out there. Fast forward to the following Friday, December 13th. Life Flight Network issued the following statement. On Saturday evening, December 7th, during a routine flight near Eugene, Oregon, one of our crews observed an unusual moving light in the sky. We can confirm that it was one of our pilots on the ATC recording that has been widely distributed over the last couple of days. While the nature of the light remains unidentified, at no time did it pose any safety risk to our aircraft or crew. Neither Life Flight Network nor our crew, though, are speculating about the origin or nature of the light, and our focus remains on the safe and efficient operation of our services. But the main question remains, were those bizarre moving lights alien spaceships? Well, the UFO Reporting Center doesn't support this idea. They claim that sightings like these are common, but they probably don't involve extraterrestrials visiting us. They might actually be SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet constellation. The thing is, at first, Starlink satellites move in a perfectly straight line, and most pilots know what such bright lights are and can identify them. But when the satellites get to their destination point where they're supposed to get into their final orbits, they begin moving around, doing maneuvers. That's when they can form weird formations. Often, those are shaped as triangles. Plus, these satellites can move back and forth and create patterns. Honestly, they can look pretty eerie, and tons of pilots don't know about that. So, when Starlink satellites rise high into the sky, loads of pilots report them as UFOs.
Are we alone in the universe? It's a question we've all asked ourselves, perhaps on a quiet, starry night, while gazing at the constellations and feeling small in the vastness of the cosmos. But what if science could actually answer it? Astrophysicists have been pondering this for decades. Back in the 1960s, a groundbreaking formula was introduced to estimate the chances of intelligent life within our galaxy, the Milky Way. It's called the Drake equation, and it was the first logical attempt to tackle this profound mystery. But here's the exciting part. After decades, without a formula surpassing Frank Drake's, scientists at Durham University in England have introduced a brand new model that could help us understand the odds of life existing across multiple universes. Intrigued? Let's dive in. Frank Drake, a radio astronomer and SETI pioneer, introduced his famous equation in 1961. He aimed to estimate the number of civilizations in the Milky Way capable of emitting detectable radio signals. But Drake knew that certain conditions would have to be met. After all, how could a microorganism on a distant planet send us signals without even possessing intelligence? The equation itself is straightforward. Drake considered variables like the number of stars formed annually,
the planets orbiting them in the habitable zone, neither too cold nor too hot, the fraction of planets where life could thrive and evolve, and finally, the lifespan of such civilizations. With these factors, the equation intended to address one big question: how many civilizations in our galaxy could be broadcasting signals right now? Since its publication, the Drake equation has sparked endless debate among scientists about the values of its variables. Its simplicity makes it brilliant, but also a constant reminder of how much we still don't know. So what makes this 2024 model so revolutionary? The researchers factored in something the Drake equation didn't: the expansion of the universe and the role of dark energy. This mysterious force, which makes up 2/3 of the total matter in our universe, accelerates its expansion. But here's the catch. For life to form, ordinary matter must clump together to create stars and planets. These stars and planets must remain stable for billions of years to allow life to evolve. This new model calculates the likelihood of intelligent life forming not just in our universe but across hypothetical universes, a scenario known as the multiverse theory. This research doesn't estimate the quantity of intelligent life in our universe. Instead, it calculates the likelihood of an observer existing in a universe with specific characteristics. And here's where it gets interesting. The researchers found that a typical observer in another universe would likely experience more dark matter than we do. In other words, our universe is statistically unusual. They also discovered that a more efficient universe, one that could convert up to 27% of its ordinary matter into stars, might have better odds of forming life. By comparison, our universe only converts about 23%. More stars mean more chances for life to develop. So, while our universe isn't the best candidate for fostering life, we're proof that the improbable is possible. This branch of science, called computational cosmology, blends theory, physics, programming, and statistics to tackle one of the universe's greatest mysteries: the role of dark matter in shaping the universe. Dr. Daniele Sorini from Durham University explains that understanding the parameters governing our universe, such as dark matter density, could even help us understand why we exist. A profound thought, isn't it? And here's the kicker. While a universe with more dark matter might have more stars and better odds of forming life, our existence proves that life can thrive against the odds. So, as we gaze into the night sky and wonder who or what might be out there, one thing is clear: we're part of something extraordinary, even in a universe that's anything but ordinary.
New research suggests that Mars might have all the necessary conditions for the appearance of life. Does it mean aliens could be already waiting for us on the red planet? Let's figure it out. On Mars, there are just the right conditions for photosynthesis beneath dusty ice layers in its mid-latitudes. And photosynthesis, the process used by plants, algae, and cyanobacteria to turn light into chemical energy, requires water and sunlight. On Mars, a thick layer of ice might filter out harmful solar radiation while letting enough light through to enable photosynthesis, creating what researchers call radiative habitable zones. This doesn't mean that, at the moment, life exists or has ever existed on Mars. At the same time, the findings give scientists clues about where to search for potential signs of life. Both Earth and Mars lie within the Sun's habitable zone, where temperatures can support liquid water. But while our planet's surface is covered with huge oceans, Mars appears dry and desolate. Yet evidence from NASA missions like Curiosity and Perseverance suggests it wasn't always this way. Ancient lakebeds and river channels show that water flowed on Mars billions of years ago. Today, water exists on Mars primarily as ice, often in surprising locations. Scientists believe Mars lost its liquid water when its magnetic field faded, which led to its atmosphere getting stripped away by solar winds. With little atmosphere left to trap heat, water vapor escaped into space, leaving the surface cold and dry. Without an ozone layer, Mars also faces intense ultraviolet radiation, which destroys the complex molecules essential for life. Mars gets about 30% more harmful UV radiation than Earth. But dusty ice layers could shield potential habitats from this radiation while still letting in enough sunlight for photosynthesis. Using computer simulations, researchers found that dust within Martian ice could cause it to melt from below, forming thin layers of liquid water. These pockets could be shielded from evaporation by the overlying ice, creating the two essential ingredients for photosynthesis: water and sunlight. Past studies also suggest that even small amounts of dust, less than 1%, in dense Martian snow, can enable melting in mid-latitudes. Observations of exposed dusty ice near Martian gullies also support the idea that these conditions could form shallow liquid water layers under the surface. At the same time, the amount of dust in the ice plays a critical role. Ice with too much dust blocks sunlight, while ice with just the right amount, from 0.01 to 0.1%, can create habitable zones at depths of 2 to 15 inches. Cleaner ice could allow these zones to form deeper, between 7 and 10 feet. As for Mars's polar regions, even though they're rich in ice, they are likely too cold for this melting to occur, making mid-latitudes a more promising target. Interestingly, similar habitats exist on Earth, providing an analog for what might happen on Mars. On Earth, cryoconite holes form when dust and sediment heat ice surfaces, melting them enough to create pockets of liquid water beneath. These translucent ice layers allow sunlight to go through, and researchers have discovered microorganisms living in these shallow subsurface environments. While they go dormant in winter, when sunlight returns in the summer, it reactivates these tiny ecosystems. While this research doesn't confirm the existence of life on Mars per se, it does open up new avenues for exploration. Understanding how dusty ice interacts with sunlight and melts could help identify potential habitable zones on the red planet. The research team is planning to refine their simulations to better pinpoint where and when melting might occur on Mars. They're also recreating these conditions in the lab to study them in greater detail. This work could provide important insights for future missions looking for signs of life on Mars. Any UFO enthusiast would tell you that the world is teeming with strange occurrences, sightings, government disclosures, and the sudden appearance of unknown craft. In 2021, the CIA declassified thousands of pages of UFO-related documents. And yet, modern-day mysteries are only the latest in a long history of unexplainable phenomena. And one of the most bizarre and chilling tales comes from Japan. It's the legend of the Utsuro Bune, a mysterious otherworldly vessel. This tale suggests that we might not be the first to toy with the idea of visitors from space. The Utsuro Bune arrived as early as 1803. It was described as a ship not of wood or sailcloth, but something alien. Professor Tanaka Kazuo of Gifu University, who has dedicated decades to the study of the Utsuro Bune legend, has pointed out that the mysterious ship of this tale resembles a flying saucer. And it was long before the modern concept of UFOs saw the light of day. So on February 22nd, 1803, off the coast of Hitachi Province, Japan, the sea seemed to give birth to an enigma. Fishermen spotted a strange vessel. It was unlike anything they had seen before, so they felt pretty unnerved when they dragged it to shore. The craft was over 10 feet tall and nearly 18 feet wide, and it had an uncanny resemblance to a koro, a traditional Japanese incense burner. But it was made not of clay or wood, but strange, lacquered rosewood on its upper half and metal plates on the bottom. As the fishermen peered inside through glass windows, they saw that an unknown script adorned the walls. They could neither read nor understand those symbols. Inside, there were cakes, water, and bed sheets. It was creepy cargo for a vessel that defied logic. And then there was another mystery, a woman. She seemed to be around 20 years old, with skin as pale as porcelain. Her red hair was long and had strands of white. She was dressed in long, smooth garments of unknown material and spoke in a language no one recognized. But the strangest thing was the box she carried. It was a rectangular object that she clutched tightly. She didn't allow anyone to touch it, no matter how persistently they asked. Rumors spread like wildfire. Most people remained cautious. They feared that tampering with such a mystery might invoke dark forces beyond human understanding. So, they chose to let the sea take its prey. According to some sources, the woman was returned to her vessel and sent back into the ocean. Those who had found her were chilled by the encounter. They were afraid that something terrible had been set in motion. In the darkness of the night, one could almost hear whispers that the Utsuro Bune was not the first of its kind to drift ashore, nor would it be the last. Indeed, that Utsuro Bune was not a single, isolated incident. Other accounts exist too, scattered across time and place. In 1698, a woman in a hollow ship was said to have appeared in Toyohashi. She was sent away when no one could understand her language. And in the decades that followed, sightings of Utsuro Bune and other strange vessels continued, each one described as eerily similar, with passengers who spoke no known language and carried strange objects. The legend continues to evolve. In 1977, 2 rare ink prints were discovered. They revealed new details and locations tied to the Utsurobune. It seems that this story, this riddle, has never quite been solved. Were those visitors from other worlds, or probably from other planets? Could those legends, with their uncanny similarities, be tied to the same truth? Were the Utsurobune vessels real, or were they the product of imagination? We don't have a certain answer yet.
One of the biggest questions that has been torturing the minds of astronomers and common folks is, why haven't we found aliens yet? You'd think with a universe so big and filled with tons of stars and planets, we'd have already bumped into some extraterrestrial neighbors by now. This question was first asked by famous physicist Enrico Fermi during a lunch with his fellow scientists. They were chatting about UFO sightings and aliens, and suddenly Fermi asked, "Where is everyone?" It seemed like a casual comment, but it sparked a huge debate. If the universe is packed with stars, planets, and the possibility of alien life, how come we haven't seen any yet? This discussion gave birth to something we now call the Fermi paradox. It goes like this. Based on what we know, there should be advanced alien civilizations out there, perhaps even many of them. They'd likely have technology that could allow them to travel across space or at least send us signals to let us know they're there. But here's the kicker. Despite all of our technology and all the searching we've done, we haven't found a single shred of solid proof that these advanced civilizations do exist. So where are they? Over the years, a lot of theories trying to explain this paradox have seen the light of day. Let's talk about some of the most interesting ones. The rare Earth hypothesis claims that Earth might just be super rare, and planets like ours, with life, are incredibly uncommon. In this case, we could be the only planet in the Milky Way harboring life, or at least intelligent life. We might also be the first intelligent civilization in our galaxy to reach this level of development. In other words, we could be pioneers, however unbelievable it may sound. At the same time, it's not very scientific to rely on a rare chance. Some people think that maybe advanced civilizations were once here, but left the Milky Way. Perhaps they developed the technology of interstellar travel, enabling them to fly between galaxies. Or they could use other exotic ways, like wormholes, hypothetical structures connecting disparate points in space-time. Maybe they found more interesting and pleasant places to live far away from us. One sad possibility is that when a civilization becomes too advanced, it ends up destroying itself. Whether through war, environmental destruction, or something else, it could be that most civilizations don't last long enough to reach out to others. Now, imagine an advanced civilization being wiped out by a disease before they could even start exploring stars. In other words, it's possible that civilizations just don't survive long enough to meet others. Another hypothesis, not very flattering to us. What if these aliens are using technology that we just don't understand? Maybe they're communicating in ways we can't detect, like using signals beyond our current understanding of physics. Scientists are discussing such possibilities, but haven't found any yet. Aliens might also be intentionally avoiding us. They could be out there but staying silent, not so eager to reveal themselves until we're ready. Speaking of being ready, some people think that aliens could be waiting for us to reach a certain level of development before they make contact. Maybe they don't want to interfere with our growth until we're more advanced. Advanced civilizations could also go into virtual realities. And if they can live in digital worlds, they might stop caring about exploring the physical universe. Why bother? Another wild idea is that some civilizations might go into a type of hibernation, waiting for the universe to cool down, because it might be more energy efficient to do so. And last but not least, there's this creepy possibility that our entire universe is a computer simulation, and aliens are hidden from us on purpose. It's something like a video game that doesn't reveal all its secrets at once until you get to the next level. Now let's talk about the odds of life out there. We know that in just our galaxy, the Milky Way, there are probably around 20 billion planets that are roughly Earth-sized and located in the habitable zone, which means they're just the right distance from their stars to have liquid water. But how many of these planets actually have life? Could it be most of them, just a few, or almost none? And out of the planets that do have life, how many host intelligent beings with technology? In the 1960s, a scientist named Dr. Frank Drake tried to estimate the number of civilizations in our galaxy that could contact us. He came up with a famous equation, later called the Drake equation. It looks complicated, but the idea is pretty simple. It helps us calculate the number of intelligent civilizations based on things like how many stars are born each year, how many have planets, how many planets could support life, and how long a civilization might last. Here's what it looks like. Let's look into this equation in more detail. N is the number of intelligent civilizations that could contact us. R is the rate of star formation in our galaxy. FP is the fraction of stars with planets. NE is the average number of planets per star that could support life. FL is the fraction of those planets where life actually develops. Fi is the fraction where intelligent life arises. FC is the fraction of civilizations that can and want to communicate. L is how long these civilizations last before they disappear. The problem is, we don't know the exact values for most of these factors. So when we plug in numbers, which we know with large errors, we get answers with very large errors too. Depending on the values, the number of civilizations in our galaxy could be anywhere from almost 0 to tens of thousands. Right now, the best estimate we can come up with gives us a very small number, close to 0. In other words, even though our galaxy is huge, it's possible we're all alone here. Or nearly alone. One big reason we haven't met any aliens yet is that even if they do exist, we might not be able to visit them, at least not with our current technology. The speed of light is a hard limit in physics, meaning nothing can travel faster than it. This makes interstellar travel super slow. The situation could be better if there were exotic ways of travel, such as wormholes and warp drives. One day, they may turn out to be real, but so far, there is little hope for that. Even if we can't meet aliens face to face, there are still ways we might discover them. One of the biggest projects is called SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. SETI scientists use huge telescopes to listen for radio signals from distant planets. If an alien civilization is sending out signals, we might be able to pick them up. And if we have a very powerful telescope, we might use it to take super detailed pictures of distant planets, maybe even Earth-like ones, hundreds of light years away. This could give us a whole new way to search for signs of alien life. In any case, even though we haven't found aliens yet, the search is far from over. Whether it's through new technology, better understanding of physics, or just listening to the stars, we might one day find that we're not alone in the universe. Until then, the question, where is everyone, keeps sparking curiosity.
A Dyson sphere is a theoretical megaproject, a ginormous sphere encircling a star with platforms orbiting in tight formation. It's supposed to be an ultimate solution both for energy production and living space. The creators of a Dyson sphere get a lot of surface area for habitation and the ability to catch every tiny bit of solar radiation and heat produced by their central star. The first person to theorize about such a bizarre construction was British-American theoretical physicist Freeman Dyson. According to him, an intelligent extraterrestrial civilization could consider building this sphere after colonizing some moons and planets in their local stellar neighborhood. With the growth of their population, these aliens would need more and more energy to sustain their lives. Dyson calculated that assuming that this alien society grew at 1% per year, their area and energy needs would become 1 trillion times larger in a mere 3,000 years. And if their solar system contained a space body similar in size to Jupiter, they could take it apart and spread its mass in a spherical shell by building a structure at twice the distance between our planet and the Sun. This amount of material would be sufficient to build a huge number of orbiting platforms. Each of them could be 6 to 10 feet thick, which would basically allow this civilization to live on their star-facing surfaces. A shell this thick could be comfortably habitable and capable of holding all the equipment needed for using solar radiation without falling onto the star from the inside. But after absorbing all this solar energy, the sphere would have to re-radiate it. Otherwise, the energy would build up, eventually causing the construction to melt. It means that the light of a star wrapped in a Dyson sphere would look dimmed or even completely darkened, depending on how dense the platforms orbiting it were. At the same time, it would glow unusually bright in infrared wavelengths invisible to the unaided eye. Because of this infrared radiation, Dyson spheres are classified as a type of technosignature. It's a sign of activity that astronomers can use to discover intelligent life forms in the universe. Some Earth-based researchers have infrared maps of the night sky they examine in hopes of spotting Dyson spheres. So far, no one has ever found one. However, one study has selected several Dyson sphere candidates. Its authors have processed large amounts of information using a special data pipeline for combining and analyzing information. One of the main search criteria is the detection of excessive infrared radiation. At the same time, it's important to distinguish this radiation from that emitted by natural objects. After a complicated filtering of millions of objects, the researchers identified 7 potential Dyson spheres. Sure, further analysis is needed to determine their nature. To do this, scientists want to use optical spectroscopy, which may reveal more details about these objects and their origins. At the same time, the researchers admit that these candidate Dyson spheres might have other explanations. For example, they could be debris disks or protoplanetary disks of young stars. Only more research can show whether we can find traces of other civilizations among star systems. For now, it's still an open question. Interestingly, Dyson spheres have been spoken about a lot in science fiction. As far back as 1937, a novel called Star Maker by Olaf Stapledon described systems in one particular galaxy that were surrounded by a gauze of light traps, which focused solar energy for intelligent use. That was the reason why the entire galaxy was dimmed. In another novel, Ring World, the writer spoke about a ring-shaped artificial structure surrounding a star.
The Roswell incident is a collection of events and myths surrounding the crash of a mysterious object in 1947. Right after rubber and metallic debris was recovered by Roswell Army airfield staff, the United States Army claimed that they had their hands on a flying disc. Just a day after this announcement was made and made international headlines, it was retracted, but the word was already out. To hide the true nature of the find, the Army stated it was a good old weather balloon. But later in 1978, a retired Air Force officer revealed that it was just a cover story. At the same time, he added that he was sure that the debris had an extraterrestrial origin. This speculation became popular thanks to the 1980 book, The Roswell Incident. It also turned into the basis for long-lasting and increasingly contradictory and complex UFO conspiracy theories. Over time, they expanded the incident to include authorities hiding the evidence of other space civilizations, multiple crashed flying saucers, alien bodies, and even reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology. However, none of those theories were based on any real evidence. But despite the absence of proof, many supporters of the UFO theory claimed that the Roswell debris was from a crashed alien craft. They accused the authorities of creating cover-up stories. This conspiracy narrative became a trope in movies, science fiction literature, and TV shows. No wonder that the town of Roswell is still promoting itself as the best destination for UFO-associated tourism. But what happened in this area in reality? The government's claim that a weather balloon had crashed at Roswell was indeed a lie. In 1994, the Air Force admitted that the recovered debris had actually been from an American balloon used to watch other nations. It was part of Project Mogul, an attempt to monitor anticipated nuclear tests that could be conducted by other countries. In 1997, an Air Force report called the Roswell Report, Case Closed, suggested that all those stories about alien bodies could have come from civilian witnesses who had seen parachute crash test dummies. The report also suggested that the witnesses might have combined several different events in their memories: the Project Mogul materials, the crash of test dummies, and a few other accidents that had occurred in the area. For many supporters of the UFO theory, though, those explanations sounded like the authorities planned to cover up their interaction with extraterrestrial civilizations. After all, in 1947, the USA, as well as some other nations, was in the midst of the flying saucer craze. People reported seeing bizarre objects in the sky. They claimed those were spacecraft piloted by aliens. It was against such a hectic background that a rancher discovered some highly unusual debris near Roswell, New Mexico. The material included tinfoil, sticks, and rubber strips. The next month, he took his findings to the Roswell sheriff. The man contacted the Roswell Army Airfield. After getting the wreckage, they issued that very extraordinary press release claiming that a flying disc had been found at a local ranch. The reasons for such an outrageous statement were unclear. In any case, the Roswell Daily Record picked up this press release right away, printing the story on the 8th of July with the headline, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." That's when the military backtracked, announcing that it had been just a weather balloon carrying a radar target. That's a device that looks like a box kite made of foiled paper fastened to a balsa wood frame. The Roswell Morning Dispatch paid attention to this new claim and released a new story called "Army Debunks Roswell Flying Disc as World Simmers with Excitement."